for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mrs. Bays?
Present.
Mrs. Epstein?
Present. Here.
Am I on? Ms. Gilliard?
Here.
Mrs. Melconian?
Here.
Mr. Smith?
Here.
Thank you, Ms. Fennick. We are now going to start with community comments. Just a reminder again regarding community comments. A community member is allowed 3 minutes at the microphone to share comments. Please sign in at the podium and identify your full name when making your statement. Any questions asked during the comment period will be answered at the next Board of Education meeting on September 21st during old business. Anyone making a community comment that has a prepared statement is welcome to leave the statement in the folder provided at the podium. The statement will be incorporated into the minutes of the meeting.
Good evening. My name is Stacy Clavateris. I'm an E&L teacher at Daly Elementary School, and I'm also a parent of one child at Sousa and one entering Weber this year, who are ecstatic that there will be all in-student and in school and not any live stream. We were beyond me, I'll speak for myself, I was beyond exhausted, but met the live stream goal last year. But as the challenges are getting harder and kids are just ready to be in school, we did the best we could. Despite our determination, creativity, and endless hours spent learning the best ways to teach remotely, it was evident that our students live streaming were at a considerable disadvantage, both emotionally and academically. So I'm here to say tonight that live streaming is not a good alternative. They could not have needed, my students especially, could not have needed my attention more while I was in the school. Simultaneously teaching live streaming and teaching in person was just an unreasonable task. And it's also not reasonable to ask young children to have the focus and attention to learn by simply looking at a computer screen from a remote location. I know if I was ever home watching my children attempting to learn from a remote location, it was completely unreasonable for them. So I was unable to adequately monitor whether the students were comprehending the material being taught and then accommodate as needed, which is what teachers continually do with their students in the classroom. It's almost impossible to do with a student live streaming. I don't have to tell anyone that has ever participated in any kind of remote meeting or class that technical issues are inevitable, which only waste valuable instructional time and causes further anxiety. As you can imagine, it is quite disappointing to hear that the district is continuing to practice the practice of live streaming at the elementary level after we personally witnessed the difficulties it presented last school year. Our students deserve better, and I sincerely hope that the district reconsiders this troublesome stance. Thank you.
Stephanie Seidel. Is this good? My name is Stephanie Seidel. I've been a Fort Washington resident and teacher for nearly 25 years. Tonight I'm going to talk about live streaming to students at home from our classrooms as a substitute for educating them. During the past year and a half, the pandemic forced all us educators to build planes as we were flying them. Teachers, administrators, paraprofessionals, students, and parents have all learned a great deal about what works and what does not work in this situation. Unequivocally, live streaming falls into the category of what does not work. As an elementary school teacher, I can tell you that teachers at school are busy teaching full classes of students. The child live streaming from home is basically looking into a fishbowl. When the teacher can engage with the live streaming student, it is to desperately deal with and fail at fixing technical difficulties as the clock is running out. Or it is to figure out if the live streaming student understands what's being taught, which is often impossible to tell in a live streaming situation. If you have ever observed an elementary school teacher at work, then you know classroom teaching is a dance, a symphony, an art form. Creatively and actively teaching concepts, offering support, managing behavior, and accommodating learning differences and special needs. When you add live streaming to this mix, the symphony becomes a cacophony. Parents and live streaming children become frustrated and angry. Children in the classroom tune out, disengage, or misbehave. And most children who are live streaming require a great deal of adult support at home during and after live streaming. This is often a hardship on parents, particularly on working parents, and those of limited English proficiency. This school district has publicly committed to prioritizing the social-emotional well-being of its students and its staff. It is also committed to equity. I can tell you there is nothing socially, emotionally sound, or equitable about live streaming for anyone. Not students, not teachers, not parents. As a teacher, I can tell you that live streaming is worse than every other horrible change in our working conditions that COVID has wreaked. If it is so stressful for teachers, imagine what it's like for children who have no control of their lives right now. Live streaming is stress-inducing, ineffective at educating, and inequitable, further disadvantaging students who belong to vulnerable populations. Don't do this to your students or your staff or the parents of our community.
Tom Johnson.
Hello, my name is Tom Johnson. I'm a physics teacher here at Schreiber High School. I've taught in the district for over 25 years. I've lived here for almost 20 years. I had some difficult experiences with live streaming last year. I found that the students had difficulty keeping their attention to the class that I was giving. It was very difficult for me to gauge how they were learning. Usually by the time the AP test would come, I'd know exactly how everyone in the class was going to do on that test. And for people that were at home all year, I had a very difficult time in doing that. Testing was really difficult with live streaming. I have friends of mine who are professors at universities. They have software that's supposed to detect eye movement of students as they're taking the tests. And it flags them if there is a problem. They tell me this doesn't work very well. They're flagging hundreds of hours of kids taking tests, and they don't have the chance of looking at all of that. I'm trying to watch them while I'm giving a test in class at the same time, and it's not going to work. And the problem becomes that they feel, not all of them, a small minority, feel that it's going to be to their benefit just to cheat on the test. And the problem is really that when they don't try, that's when they don't learn. And I feel like when kids are in my class, I can coax them along. They can see what all of the other students are doing, and it's going to help them to go. And when they're at home, they won't get that same push. I don't know what they're doing at home. I would telling them, ask me questions at home. It's on you. Make sure that you ask me a question each week so that you can keep yourself engaged. But it really didn't work very well. And when we have the option of being in school, I think being in school is the way we want to go. Thank you very much.
Joy Krebs. Good evening. My name is Joy Grasso Krebs. I've been a chemistry teacher here since 2003. Yes, okay. Tonight I want to compare and contrast personal experience that I had in terms of one-to-one home instruction live stream as opposed to live stream in the general classroom. March 2020, I get a call from Schreiber administration in coordination with Dr. Allen. We have a student who must finish Regents Chem by June. Okay, let me talk to the parent, let me talk to the student, let me assess the situation, and I can tell you if I can get the job done. We got the job done. Because I was able to use all of my experience and all of my professionalism to know it was reachable. It was a one-to-one home instruction on the live stream. Extremely effective. The student and I had such a rapport that she came to me the following fall and asked me for a college letter. I never did a college letter for a home instruction, ever in my life. And I was proud to do it for her because she earned it. Now, contrast. Live stream in the general classroom. Okay. Ms. Brooks, you were on the committee with me. Schreiber High School had to follow the block. We had to follow the block because of the uncertainty. It was the best solution at the time. But our strength was our weakness. Because I want you to think about somebody's A day. 1 hour of math, 1 hour of science, 1 hour of social studies, 1 hour of English, 1 hour of foreign language. That's 5 hours in front of the screen for a Schreiber student. On what day? One day. They would come back and say, oh God, Krebs, I was lost. I didn't know what you were doing. And I had your 6th period. By the time I got to you, I was shocked. That's what we're going to do to these quarantine students? Not an effective platform. That's what we feel is a good educational experience. Heed the warning of your teachers. Live stream is not an effective platform.
30 seconds.
And President Bays, Board Member Brooks, Dr. Hines, you know me. You know I'm a fierce advocate for students at Schreiber High School and in this district. Please listen and understand this is not an effective platform. Thank you.
There are no more comments. I'm sorry.
Dan Dowling, teacher at Weber Middle School. Excited to begin my 17th year in Port Washington tomorrow. First to the new members of the board, Dr. Block, Ms. Malconian, and Mr. Smith, congratulations and welcome. I'd also like to applaud Mrs. Epstein for the way she handled a rather challenging board meeting, the last meeting. If the board is looking for evidence as to why we should not be live streaming, look no further than the August 10th board meeting. The meeting was littered with delays, malfunctioning equipment, and speakers who were difficult to hear. Those, like me, watching at home, watching the live stream at home, were left frustrated, stressed, anxious, and overwhelmed. When teachers are live streaming, they don't have the technical support in attendance to fix those malfunctioning microphones. Instead, we have a classroom full of eager students yearning to learn. Make no mistake, I am here speaking on behalf of teachers. But I'd like to share what I've experienced with students during live stream classes. Not the ones at home, not them. Instead, the ones that are in our classroom. Our goal is to turn our teams, our classrooms, into little learning communities where everyone feels comfortable. I cannot tell you how many times I've called on a student during a live stream class and their first instinct is to answer, and then instead they turn to look at the camera, and instead of eagerly participating, they provide a rather timid response. After all, there is an invasion. We need to eliminate that invader. At the first live board meeting several weeks back, I couldn't wait to attend. Some of you know how excited I was to have a live in-person meeting after we did it for an entire year. But that's for another day. I eagerly attended, and I ended up in a seat in the Weber Auditorium, which exposed me to the camera. During the night, I was the recipient of text messages poking fun at my bald dome. Thankfully, I'm a grown man. I can laugh off the messages. Everything's okay. But an 11-year-old boy, a 12-year-old girl, they're not as comfortable in their preteen standing to just slough that off. And we know there are people who are going to have those messages.
30 seconds.
We need to eliminate that invader. Thank you for listening and hopefully considering what you hear from the experts in the classroom.
Thank you. If there are no more community comments, we will move on to item number 3 on the agenda, which is the opening statement of the president. That would be me. I would just like to actually thank all who are here today. I know it's a torrential storm, and we thank you for coming and sharing your thoughts. To the board, welcome back, everyone. To all our staff, welcome back. We are excited to begin our 21-22 school year in person and look forward to seeing everyone in school, in the buildings, and I have all the confidence in the world that we will have a successful school year. I will now move on to item number 4, which is the adoption of the agenda. I make a motion to adopt the agenda. Do I have a second? Ms. Brooks. All in favor? 6-0. We move on to number 5 on the agenda, report of the superintendent. Dr. Hines.
Yes, good evening. The enrollment report was last done on August 2nd, and at that time we had 5,196 students. That's only a slight change from where we were in the spring of 15 students less. And we'll be running a new enrollment report this week when our students arrive to school, and I'll be glad to share that with the board. In addition, the latest enrollment calculation that we have for kindergarten enrollment is at 351 students. That was calculated on the 23rd of August, and that's below our projected number of 391 students.
Good evening to our Port Washington community. I know some of you are here tonight physically during these difficult weather conditions, and I want to thank you for joining us, and I want to thank our community members who are watching via live stream as well. And I want to update our school community that we welcomed back our staff today, and it was a very successful day. As I visited all of our schools, it was great to see all of our staff members working hard to prepare for tomorrow when our kids arrive for my favorite day of the year, and I think it is for many of us, the first day of school. And it was very obvious we are ready to open and to open safely. So please note we have canopies set up outside of every school to use as outdoor classroom space, and if they're not physically there right now, I know we have one at Triber and at Weber, but they will certainly be there before the end of this week. Our custodians have been incredibly diligent replacing the HEPA filters in our units within all of our schools. I want to thank them for all of their hard work. Our district-wide reopening committee has met every week over the past month, focusing on updating our plan and discussing the latest topics or guidance that is sent our way. They have been an incredible resource and support, and I'm thankful for their expertise, for their service, and we will continue to meet every week throughout the year. Our administrators, our teachers, and staff are ready for tomorrow morning. I'll be visiting every school tomorrow, like I do every year, and I can't wait to see our students and our parents. And I'd like to thank in advance my district office team for working overtime in preparing for tomorrow as well, as our buildings and grounds department, who are exceptional, our custodians, and of course the rest of our staff. Thank you. Finally, the district sent our staff and community a welcome back video from our leadership team and the Board of Education president and the Parent Council president. I know we will continue to work together throughout the year in making this the best year yet. I'm going to hold off any other comments I may have for later on, so thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hines, and thank you, Dr. Shields. Okay, item number 6, BOE meeting minutes. A motion to approve the minutes from the August 10th meeting. I make a motion. Do I have a second? Ms. Melkonian. All in favor? 6-0. Thank you. Moving on. Okay. We do not have a discussion item tonight, and we do not have any item, which would have been number 7. Item number 8 is committee reports. We do not have any committee reports either, since they have not met. I can tell everyone that the first budget meeting is scheduled for 9/20 at 8:30 a.m. in the Kathy A. Mooney Annex. Also, the first policy meeting is scheduled for 9/29 at 9:30 a.m., also in the Kathy Mooney Annex. So we will move on to number 9, which is the action items. We're going to be going into a consent agenda. Does anyone have any questions or want to pull any of the items listed? Ms. Brooks?
I did, and I'm not sure. I think it's item number, it's under instruction. And I thought Dr. Hines maybe would want to mention the 3 additional teachers who are being added. I know one we covered in the budget, but there are 2 additional.
It's item number 9.4.2. Dr. Shields, can you just give us an update?
Of course. As the backup in the board agenda packet, I believe explains, I just want to make sure it's understood, is that there's 3 new elementary lines being created or positions being created. One of those positions is an increase in the STEAM program by adding 1 section there, 1 teacher there. That will allow us to have a full-time STEAM teacher in each elementary school and in the middle school. There are 2 other elementary lines being created. One is to reduce class size in kindergarten at Salem, and then the other section is to reduce class size in 1st grade at Guggenheim. Any questions?
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions on that? Okay. Mr. Smith.
So regarding the new positions at Salem and Guggenheim, those were teachers that had retired, and those were positions that were used to close the budget gap last year, correct?
You are correct that in the middle of the budget development process, it was important that we get to a certain budget number for the community that we thought was more acceptable. So we came up with 3 sections at the elementary level where at the time we could reduce the number of elementary teachers, and we had some retirements at that level, so we're just going to attrition them. It wasn't actual people that were losing their jobs.
Right. So I think that's positive, but how do we find them? How do we find the funds, just for the public to understand where those funds came from to create those positions that had been compacted?
Of course. So the STEAM position is being funded out of the general fund, and the 2 other classroom positions, the K and the 1st, are being funded out of the federal funds that we received this year that we'll be using over the next 2 years.
Any other questions? Okay, so, Rachel, sorry, Ms. Gillier.
It's not a question, I just want to add a comment. I want to thank you for all 3 of these. I know parents were very concerned, especially in this year, about those grades having class sizes that were a little on the larger side. And although they weren't class sizes that I think any school district should be ashamed of. I think from the administration, I'm clear that you are cognizant that we're going into a year where it's already going to still be a little bit difficult, and it would be nice to have a teacher have fewer children to focus on. So thank you on behalf of the community. I'm sure that Guggenheim and Salem parents are really relieved to know that this is the decision that was made. On the esteemed PEP teacher, I just wanted to note for anybody who doesn't know the whole history of this, that we are finally reaching the point where we're back at the number of esteem and PEP teachers that we had. Deborah Brooks can probably tell me the number of years, a decade ago. Right?
Too many.
It's a long time ago. And I think that this is, I'm glad Ms. Brooks asked the question, because it's something that we should highlight, because I think it's a step forward for the district. Our PEP esteemed teachers do wonderful work with our core group of students who are identified in the elementary schools, but adding this additional PEP esteemed teacher allows them to have more time to do more work with every single child in the elementary school. And the curriculum that the PEP and esteemed teachers do when they push into the classrooms is different and supplemental to what's happening in the classrooms overall. It adds enrichment to all the children's lives, and I think it's really wonderful that every elementary school student will benefit from this additional hire. And actually, I'm saying elementary school because I'm in the mindset of fewer PEP esteem teachers. I know in the past when we had this many, we also have one at Weber, and I'm hoping very much that our next update is going to be that a lot of what used to exist at Weber is restored, and that we're seeing more PEP and esteem in the later grades at Weber as well. So fingers crossed, thank you very much, and I can't wait to hear the updates.
Oh, go ahead.
Can I just clarify? I think this takes us up to 1 in Weber and in all the elementaries. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's 6. It's a total of 6. So it's 1 at Weber. Sorry if I made that unclear. 1 at Weber and 1 at every elementary school. So I think in the past when we had that, we had PEP up through 7th or 8th grade, right? 7th. No, 7th. We had PEP through 7th grade when we had.
Okay, but right now we have it till 6th, correct? Okay.
I just want to add one more thing. You know, going back in time, during my first year when we were focusing on our budget, we were having the same discussions, whether it was about adding this PEP teacher, whether it was with Dr. Allen, adding the inclusion teachers at the elementary level. We are at that point right now, and it's a really great first step for us to move forward. And so I appreciate the board approving this and making sure our kids get what they need and deserve. So thank you for that.
Okay, so since we're talking about that, I just want to add one thing to the board. We've already mentioned that the first budget and facilities meeting is on September 29th, but just let's all keep in mind that we've added positions from the federal dollars that are being funded for 2 years. So as a board, if we are committed to these practices, I think especially the budget committee needs to start planning for going forward how we can commit to staying within keeping these programs or keeping these positions. So let's just keep that also in the back of our heads. And I know, Adam, you're
that's
not-
going to be on the agenda for that first
Right.
meeting, is studying what we've picked up through these federal funds that we won't be able to sustain when the federal funds run out in terms of operating costs, which I think is a significant portion of what we've committed to at this
Right.
point.
Perfect, right. So I just, we're all good. Okay, so let's move on. Before we get to the consent agenda, I just want to let the board know that we are pulling item number 9.4.3 from the consent agenda. So I'm going to make a motion that we approve items 9.3 to 9.4.2. But before we do, I just want everybody, okay, hold on, let's back off. Back up one more second. Before we get to consent agenda, item number 9.4.1 Sandra Arroyo's effective date has been changed from 9/1 to 9/29. So board, if just be aware of that, that'll be reflected in the minutes. Then we are going to approve items 9.3 to 9.4.2. We are pulling item 9.4.3, and we are going to be approving items 9.4.4 to 9.6.1. Is that okay? Did everybody understand that? Okay, because it took me 2 tries. So I make a motion to approve those items I just listed. Is there a second? Ms. Epstein, can I have a show of hands, please? 6-0. Thank you very much. Okay, so we moved on. Hold on, swiping pages. We now get to, we do not have board policy. We go back to old business, which is community comments from past meetings. Dr. Hines and Dr. Shields, will you be answering these questions? Should I read you the comments that we had?
Yeah, please.
Okay, so the first community comment that we're responding to was that CRSE places extremely high value on family input on kids' education. How are families being surveyed and reached out to about their opinions on safety and other issues around the reopening? Other districts are sending surveys and making calls. What is Port doing and when? So it's family input on the reopening.
So, yeah, well, reopening is tomorrow. So we're not going to be sending out a survey tonight, and we haven't in the past. Moving forward, however, I think it's incredibly important that we do tap into our community as far as their thoughts and feelings as the year moves on to see how we're doing. I think it's important for their input, not only as far as safety is concerned, and we can use thought exchange, we can certainly use traditional surveys moving forward, but we're not at this moment right now for reopening.
We have included community members and parents in the reopening committee, correct?
We certainly have, yes. And every committee that we hold, we always have parents and community members.
Thank you. Okay, and the next question was regarding mask data, and the question was, if you do mandate masks, please supply the studies you are looking at to say that they work. I think this question was before we had a mandate from the state, but I don't know if you want to talk about what we use to make that. It's kind of a moot issue right now.
Yeah, it is. As we know, the new governor moved forward with a mask mandate for all school districts. So in as much as the district already moved forward with their own thoughts about mandating masks, which I certainly appreciate, was a very hard discussion and decision and recommendation, but we moved forward. And then the governor, a few days later, or actually may have been like 2 or 3 days later, she decided to do the same thing. When we based our decision or recommendation to the board, it was based on the guidance not only from the CDC, but from Department of Health, both at Suffolk and Nassau County, and certainly the New York State Department of Health. So our recommendations were with organizations that we use all the time.
Thank you. Is there any new business? Ms. Gilliar.
I have a question that I think is like a reopening question, so it may be a question that Dr. Hines wants to direct to Dr. Allen, who I saw just perk up as soon as I said reopening. So my question is this. I think the history of this pandemic so far is we keep thinking things will get better, and in some ways they have, but there are also always new bad complications that we're not ready to deal with. And at this point, we're kind of pros at keeping kids safe in school the way school has been, right? So I have every confidence that with all the facts of what last year had, we know how to not have any transmission happen in school. That happened here last year, right? My concern is the Delta variant, right? So as not a medical professional, I'm reading what scientists are writing about it, and the increase in transmissibility, right? The short period of time that it takes to transmit and the high viral load that you get. So I've read 2 minutes versus in the past you had to be around somebody for 15 minutes. I'm wondering if there has been any discussion or consideration about adjusting any of the rules around the times when children's masks are off with this increased transmissibility of Delta in mind. So mask breaks, snacks, lunches, are we considering anything to try and make those situations safer living with the Delta variant? More time outside, more tents? Is there anything that we're doing differently, and also anything that the Board of Ed needs to be thinking about funding in order to make this situation safer? Because obviously there's a cost to, outside coverage for children.
Okay. So I think the first important thing that we've decided as a reopening committee is that ongoing communication, ongoing meetings, looking at things regularly, making sure that we're keeping track of what's happening with the guidance that's coming from the CDC. The one thing that they did add, the CDC added the exemption for the close contacts for that, if they were closer than 3 feet. The one important piece that they talk about is that masks are being worn correctly and consistently all the time. So that, I think, is something that we'll really be working on, communicating out to the staff, that's a really important thing. Anything that was communicated to me last year is the kids really did do a great job with keeping their masks on across the board. Because when we did have situations where we had a quarantine, it was one of the questions we asked. And again, across the board, the kids really did a great job with that. I know we were purchasing more tents for outside at the elementary schools, and we are encouraging as much outside as possible. Discussed, so.
Just want to add, as far as having those canopies outside, we're renting them from a local agency here, which is great. The state aid department, from what I understand, from what Jim Restano has shared, is that they're cracking down if school districts or if they have more than one canopy over a certain size. So we've requested to have multiple canopies, and we're waiting their approval. So that's why when we talk about one, especially at Schreiber, when we know our kids are eating outside, that one little canopy is going to hold maybe like 15 kids. So if that. So we're looking to have more outdoor spaces for kids, and that should be happening shortly.
Can I ask one follow-up? When you said you're encouraging more outside, what does the communication look like that's going to staff members to encourage it? And is there any increased flexibility in the schedule or anything to give wiggle room? Because I know sometimes there are constraints on staff members and they feel like they don't have the time to do that.
Dr. Shields, I don't know if you have any direct information on that.
So I would, at the elementary level, I understand that they've created different learning spaces outside that have assigned times to them where teachers can sign up for them. But that's the structure of the language that I think you're talking about at the elementary level. At the middle school and high school level, I see teachers out, for example, on the bleachers teaching. I see teachers out underneath the tents that we had in the spring outside. They're very creative about how do they use that outside space.
Mr. Smith, did you want to say something?
I just wanted to follow up that I think that the reopening committee and yourself and the rest of the staff were very successful in making a plan that was consistent with what we had talked about was kind of the guiding star and the principle, which is follow the CDC, follow New York State, follow Nassau County Health, I guess, in the opposite order. And I would highly encourage that we would continue to do that and not be so reactive to news stories about Delta variant and different things that, we're reading the changing, because we're not the experts. And I think that as a district, we've decided and have been very successful making a plan and following it. And to the extent that those agencies were to give us different guidance, we know we're going to react and make that guidance. But I would encourage you to keep doing what you're doing, what I think has been done excellently.
Thank you. Coincidentally, Dawn Bollerman called Department of Health today. So we are going to continue doing that as much as we need to.
Ms. Brooks.
I just have a quick question. So last year, we used to rely, at the beginning, we were relying on the Department of Health to notify the school district that there was a positive case, and that quickly fell by the wayside when the Department of Health couldn't keep up with the number of cases. Are we back to relying on the Department of Health, or have letters gone out to parents urging them to contact the school district if their child tests positive, or a staff member if they test positive? Are we relying on parents to inform the school district or the Department of Health?
We're relying on the parents and the staff members to inform us, which they have been already.
Okay, just want to point out something. We pulled item, going back to consent agenda, everyone. We pulled item 9.4.3, but we shouldn't have. So, just want to move backwards a little bit, and I would like to make a motion to approve item 9.4.3, just for the board to understand 9.4.3 set up the remaining. So 9.4.3 set up is the wording that sets up for 9.4A and 9.5A. So that's how we we have to go. The resolution for 9.4.3 is the resolution that sets up the ability to have 9.4 and 9.5, okay? It was
Yes.
clarified.
That's correct.
That's the stipulation that's referencing to.
But didn't we pull out the stipulation?
Right, so I need to put it back in.
Do we have the stipulation?
The stipulation is to allow for the positions in 9.4 and 9.5. That's what that stipulation
Not
was.
the other one we were
We
talking
made a
about.
mistake.
Got it.
Okay? So I would like to make a motion to approve item 9.4.3. Ms. Brooks is seconding. May I please see a show of hands? Approving, 6-0. Thank you. Sorry for the mix-up, guys. Wasn't my fault. Okay, so if we're done with new business, we have an opportunity for the community to be heard as well. Again, I am not going to give the little blurb on what the rules are, but if there's anyone who would like to be heard. Okay, thank you. We are now moving on to, wait, Ms. Brooks, do you have something to say? We are now moving on to item number 14, which would be a recess to executive session if needed.
I would like to request that we recess to executive session.
Okay.
On what basis, please?
Basis of
Sorry, to record
personnel matter.
personnel matters.
Okay. So the board, we are now going into recess. Do I need a second for that? Yes, do I have a second? Ms. Brooks has a second. Are we all in favor? 6-0. The board will be going into executive session.
Emily?
Yes.
In the interest of everybody's time, do we need anyone besides Dr. Hines and Dr. Shields to stay?
That's up
Of
to
the
you.
staff members?
No,
To let
I
them
don't think
go?
so.
Yeah.
Okay, so Dr. Shields and Dr. Hines will stay, and everyone else. And then, do we have to come back in here to adjourn, or can we adjourn? This is all a process. We have to come back in here and adjourn. Okay, y'all stay tuned. We'll be back.
I think we could tell the people sitting here that we don't anticipate doing
Yeah,
any
I
other
think you all can go home.
business.
Wait, everyone understand what's happening?
So the board is going into executive session. We're going to be going into the conference room in the Schreiber main office. Okay, everybody? Can I be heard? Okay, I'm making a motion to reconvene into public session. Ms. Epstein is seconding. All in favor? 6-0. Thank you. I do have a matter of new business. I have an action item, a resolution, and I'm going to read it, and then I'm going to ask the board for a vote. The Board of Education of the Port Washington Union Free School District, a resolution approving that certain performance bond release and assignment between the Port Washington Union Free School District and Great American Insurance Company. Whereas, on or about March 31st, 2020, the Port Washington Union Free School District, the district, entered into a contract, with 512 Restoration, Inc., contractor, to perform window replacement, cupola, and chimney reconstruction work at Weber Middle School in the town of North Hempstead, New York, parentheses, the project. And whereas contractor obtained a performance bond number 3402596, the bond, the Great American Insurance Company, the surety, in connection with the contract, and whereas on or about June 22nd, 2021, the district notified contractor that the district was exercising its right under the contract to terminate the contract for cause based on certain failures by contractor to perform thereunder, at which time the district also may demand that the surety fulfill its obligations pursuant to the bond, and whereas in consultation with the district administration, counsel for the district reached terms of settlement to resolve the district's bond claim against the surety in the interest of completing work on the project and avoiding the costs and uncertainties of litigation with respect to the bond claim. And whereas counsel for the district and the surety have prepared that certain performance bond release and assignment, the settlement agreement which resolves the bond claim in its entirety. And whereas it is the recommendation of the district administration and legal counsel to settle the bond claim pursuant to the terms of the settlement agreement. And whereas the Board of Education finds it in the best public interest to approve the settlement agreement and to authorize the superintendent of schools or the superintendent's designee to undertake whatever actions are necessary to execute and implement the settlement agreement. Now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Education, the district as follows. The Board of Education hereby authorizes and approves the resolution of the bond claim pursuant to the terms of the settlement agreement, and the Board of Education hereby authorizes the superintendent of schools or superintendent's designee to execute the settlement agreement and to undertake whatever further actions are necessary in order to implement the settlement agreement. The question of the adoption of the foregoing resolution was duly put to a vote on the roll call, which resulted as follows. Do I have a motion? I have a motion. All in favor?
Questions?
Answers.
We haven't seen the terms of the stipulation. You just read us the resolution. So what does the stipulation say?
Do you have the stipulation?
So are we being made whole? In other words, is the work being completed?
The work will be able to move forward and be completed, yes.
Without any additional?
I'm not able to answer that. It doesn't say whether it's additional costs or not. I don't recall what that is. That would be a question for Kathy. Do you know, Mike?
Do you know?
No, I don't. I can, yeah, we're going to text her right now to.
Does someone have the stipulation? Can I see it?
It's what Kathy referred to us earlier, Adam.
If I could just point out for the people who are listening, this was not the subject of going into exec session. We actually did discuss a personnel matter in exec session. This is just an addendum to the agenda.
So the original contract is $205,000, and we're settling for $76,000. I just want to understand if there's $76,000 to complete the job.
Hold on, Dr. Hines is calling. The work was partially done, right? Adam, this is a settlement. This is a legal settlement. Hold on.
The bond owes us completion of the job, and they're giving us $76,000. So I want to understand if $76,000 completes the job.
Sorry. So, yeah, so Kathy O'Hara said we will be made whole with this stipulation.
We have a contractor who's finishing it at that price?
Which is why we were doing this now, right? So she said if we voted on this tonight, we can get the work started tomorrow. The 5th.
Okay.
The 5th. Not tomorrow, the 5th. Any other questions? Can I take a vote again? All in favor? Oh, Ms. Epstein, second. All in favor, 6-0. Okay, so I am now making a motion to adjourn the meeting. Do I have a second? Thank you, everyone. Our next meeting is on September 21st. It will be at 7:30 p.m., and it will be here in the Schreiber Auditorium. Thank you for our 2 participants who are still here. Good night.